Welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Center video podcast. Today our guest is Iryna Kosse, who is leading research fellow at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting in Kyiv, Ukraine. Welcome, Iryna.
Hello, Sergej. Thank you for having me.
Your primary research focus is logistics, and Ukraine has suffered a lot of forcible changes in this area since the last over 2 years. What were the main disruption areas for logistics after the start of the full-scale invasion by Russia?
The most serious disruption was when Russia blocked major Ukrainian seaports and occupied the rest of them. Ukraine exports around 80 to 90% of its exports by sea, so seaports was a very important transportation mode for Ukraine, and money from exports is a very important contributor to Ukrainian budget. So when Russia blocked seaports, Ukraine had a very difficult issue on how to continue exporting. And as you can imagine, all those flows of goods went to other modes of transportation, namely road and railway. And it all caused huge lines at the border, as the capacity of the Ukrainian border crossing points with its neighboring countries, they couldn't process all that flow. And for example, on the railway, some goods were standing in line for a couple of months. And
just to make
roads,
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but just to make this understandable for our audience, what was the ratio between the sea exports for Ukraine and land exports? What volume of exports had to be substituted by the land routes?
I don't have the exact percentages, but if we just look at the agricultural exports, Ukraine exported around 16 million tons of agricultural products annually, and all of that was exported by sea. So additional volume that had to cross the land border of Ukraine was at least 60 million tons. What Ukraine exported on road and railway, those were goods that are less bulky, so they had less volume, and the existing capacity was enough for them. So when those like bulk goods like corn and wheat went to the land border, that created the problem.
Absolutely, one can imagine that, and we have seen all the problems on the bottlenecks of the export, like bridges or tunnels, or other logistic areas where the capacity of the road was not enough to accept all the goods. But another problem which Ukraine has faced, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, was that Ukraine had to accept much more of heavy goods being imported to Ukraine, mostly military goods. How could the Ukrainian transport system manage all these new routes and new cargo directions, the new exports on land, new imports of military goods, and also, of course, the number of refugees who were leaving the country with passenger trains and cars?
Yes, you're right. The issue was not just with Ukrainian exports, but with Ukrainian imports as well. And the issue was even more serious with imports, because the exports issue was eased somewhat by the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which started in the summer of 2022. So at least some of Ukrainian exports could leave Ukraine via sea, but imports were not covered by that initiative. So all Ukrainian imports continued to come to the country through its land border. And of course, that created additional challenges. And Ukrainian transport system managed, because we have very developed railway system in the country, and the railway has much more importance than it has in the European countries. Around 25-30% of Ukrainian goods are transported by rail, which is, as I say, a very significant proportion. And railway is very, I would say, successfully competing with road, although it's losing its share over with years, but still it has a significant share. And the rest, of course, was transported to Ukraine by road and on trucks. Another issue that you mentioned is passenger transportation. Of course, before the war, most passengers traveled to Europe by planes, and this is another issue, another impact of the war, that the Ukrainian airspace was closed, and Ukrainians can no longer travel anywhere on air. And so with the closure of the airspace, there was a need to develop new routes for international passenger transportation. And here I can only praise Ukrainian railways for quickly communicating with neighboring countries and establishing additional passenger routes. And some of the most frequently used routes by Ukrainians is to Poland, Romania, and Hungary, I would say. And Ukrainians, with this like more than 3 years of war, I think they already learned their most convenient routes. A lot of Ukrainians come to Poland, to Warsaw, to other countries where there are airports, and they travel to other European cities.
Indeed, there are like quite new road connections which appeared. Like I personally used yesterday one of them going to Ukraine via Rzeszów airport on the Polish side of Ukrainian border when I came to Rzeszów from Berlin, and then crossed the land border to Ukraine. Like others use Przemysl train or other roads, or Kelm, for example. We are talking to Iryna Kosse, who is a leading research fellow at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting. She is an expert in logistics. Don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe to this channel. And here is the discussion on how the war against Ukraine, led by Russia since over 3 years in full-scale form, and since over 10 years in a lesser scale form, how did it impact the situation with Ukrainian logistics? Iryna, amid these 2 years of war, did the new logistic hubs appear in Ukraine, substituting those which has been lost?
Yes, indeed. The first thing that comes to mind are the river ports on the Danube River, which before the war, Ukraine didn't utilize that much, and the capacity was low. They only served very short routes to Romania, small boats. But with the blockage of the seaports, of the deep water seaports in Odessa, the Danube River ports, they gained importance, and Ukraine managed to establish connections with the Romanian authorities, and they agreed that some of the goods will be transported to Romanian port of Constanța on these like river boats, and then reloaded on the big container ships and other ships in Constanța. So there is this steady flow of Ukrainian produce through these river ports to the Constanța port. And Now these three ports, and let me name them, it's Izmail, Reni, and Ust-Dunaysk, are situated on the Danube River. They are thriving, and the economic development of the area around these ports is also increasing. So that's an interesting thing to look after and to see how the war can have. I would say this is the only positive impact of the Russian aggression for this particular region. Other transport hubs that I can name are the transshipment hubs along the Ukrainian border with Poland and Hungary and other neighboring countries. Excuse me. They also saw a rapid development because of the increased trade flows, and more and more transshipment hubs and dry ports are being built along this border. And I see in the media announcements of additional facilities planned or being built along the border.
But we have observed recently development, especially on Ukrainian-Polish border, but also on Ukrainian-Hungarian border, partly in Romania, but mostly in Poland and in Hungary, with road blockades by the farmers in Poland, for example. How much negative impact does it have for Ukraine's logistics, and can these processes be attributed to any political actor?
It did have a negative impact on Ukrainian economy and Ukrainian logistics, but logistics sector is very flexible and very quick to adapt. I would say that it took Ukrainian transport companies from 1 to 2 months to establish new routes, not involving Poland. We now see with numbers that the exports to Poland or through Poland of Ukrainian agricultural products last month decreased 3 times compared to the previous months, compared to January, say. And the trade flow through, say, Hungary or Slovakia increased. The most increase was to Romania and Moldova. So we can see this adaptation of Ukrainian logistics companies to the hurdles on the Polish border. Replying to a question on whether this is a political issue, I'm an economist, so I usually don't like to answer the political questions, but here I just don't see any economic grounds to these protests. All the arguments of Polish farmers that Ukrainian agricultural products disrupt competition on the Polish market, I don't see how they are like grounded. I don't see any concrete examples that of this impact. The Polish farmers say that due to Ukrainian agricultural exports, the prices on the Polish market dropped and the farmers lost their profits. But when we analyze, we see that this is the global trend on the world market and not just on the Polish market. So Ukrainians couldn't cause drop of prices like in the world. And other issues are other arguments that I see from the protesters. Frankly speaking, I don't see any economic grounds. So I can only suspect that the major issue is political.
I see. And but you have already talked about the role of the Black Sea export route, and that Ukraine has partly regained control over it. And I want to remind our audience that after the several months of so-called grain deal with Russia, allegedly allowing Ukraine to export a certain amount of grain through the Black Sea, Ukraine has gained control step by step over the Black Sea, pushing the Russia's Black Sea fleet towards the east of the Black Sea. And now, does it look like for you that Ukraine has completely restored control over the western part of the Black Sea and regained the ability to export the goods from Odessa port?
Yes, gradually Ukraine is regaining its ability to export. I'm still using the words in the process, because I don't see that this process is complete yet, because there are still some unresolved issues. Uh, Starting, I would say, November last year, Ukraine is exporting and importing from three deep sea ports of Odessa, which are Odessa port, Chernilevsky, and Pivdenny. This is a very big development. If we're looking at the trade numbers, then we see great increase in the volumes, which are now even surpassed the volumes during the Black Sea Grain Initiative. But what is more important, that Ukraine now has ability to import by sea as well, and this is really important. As I mentioned earlier, maritime transportation was the main mode of transportation for imports. But there are several issues remaining. First is that due to difficult security situation in Ukraine, and Russia continues to shell Ukrainian ports and to target Ukrainian infrastructure, there are high risks for transport companies and for the goods, and that the vessels, the vehicles, and the goods itself need to be insured, and the insurance has to be covered by the big insurance companies in order for Ukraine to regain the pre-war trade volumes. Right now, there is a program, an insurance scheme to insure the vessels, but so far the goods are not insured, and the goods, while they are in the ports, stored in the on terminals, still are not insured, and this create issues. Right now, Ukraine is working on regaining the trade in containers, and for big container lines and for big companies, this is very important to have this insurance coverage. Right now, what our Ministry of Infrastructure says, that they are hoping that the first small container ships will arrive at the Odessa ports in the coming days, and they hope that when the big companies see that everything is okay with those small ships, then the big ships will also return. But again, it all depends on the security situation, and if what we saw in the recent weeks with increased shelling by Russia of Ukrainian infrastructure, then the issue of recovering the maritime trade is under question.
But that is exactly what many experts say, that it is quite different challenges to reestablish export of bulk goods and reestablish export of containers, as containers need to be accumulated in the port, and when you have like hundreds or even thousands of containers, they are a natural target for the Russian missiles, and no exporter would risk to halt their containers on the port facility ground like for days or even weeks, knowing that the risk that they will be destroyed or at least damaged by the Russians is extremely high. Can Ukrainian state provide some sort of insurance here if insurance companies are not ready to step in?
The Ukrainian state does provide insurance, but it's small coverage. Ukraine doesn't have a lot of money to offer for insurance, so that's why the cooperation with international financial companies is so important. There are other options. For example, there is an option of creating a so-called hub in Turkey or maybe in Romania, so that Ukrainian containers will be stored there and will be transported by smaller ships to Ukrainian ports. That way they can be covered by insurance while they are stored in those Turkish or Romanian ports, and an additional smaller insurance which can be which can be covered by, say, Ukrainian state. They will be transported to Danube ports or to Odessa port. So I see that the government is evaluating different issues here.
What is the situation with the EU regulation of Ukrainian exports? We know that the EU has discussed the introduction of new limits for the Ukrainian goods. It is not quite the logistics issue, it is more an issue of tariffs and customs and barriers. But of course, this influences the situation with the Ukrainian exports. How is the situation on this field?
As far as I know, we're waiting for the continuation of the agreement that would allow Ukraine to continue to export to the EU without duties, and we hope that it will be adopted very soon. And another issue is we have like two types of agreement. One is on the trade, is a trade agreement, and another one is what we call in Ukraine the transport visa free, so which allow the Ukrainian transport companies to transport goods to the EU without any permits. Because before the agreement was signed, Ukrainian companies were operating on the basis of the agreements between neighboring countries, with say Poland or Bulgaria or Romania, and which established how many companies can cross the border each year. And just with Poland, we had around 160,000 such permits per year, which was with the war and with the air and the sea blockade was not enough, because the number of trucks crossing the Polish border increased to more than 500,000. So this transport visa free is also very important for Ukraine. But returning to the trade agreement, yes, Ukraine needs it, and yes, we see that the mere volume of Ukrainian agricultural exports does disturb European markets, and we see that the protest by Polish farmers is just one indication of that. And the European Commission tries to balance the market and limit the trade in what it's called sensitive products. so far. These are products like wheat, corn, and recently they added to that poultry, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, eggs. So these are just like maybe five products which will be limited. Um, Ukraine argues that it exports to the EU out of necessity, that if it wasn't for the war, we will continue to export to other countries. It's just because our other modes of transportation are blocked. We need to use the remaining means of exports, and it so happens that it's through European borders, and that's why there was such an increase. So we'll see how it goes. We hope that the exceptional circumstances of Ukraine will be taken into account, and that Ukrainian trade won't be limited very much.
But what is about the interconnectivity of Ukraine itself during the wartime? Ukraine is the largest European country by its territory. You have like from the east to west, you have almost 1,500 kilometers. And those who travel now during the wartime in Ukraine, they see, like I've been traveling just 2 days ago through Ukraine up to Donetsk region, and you see, like on one hand, you have a lot of construction works, including construction of new roads, like the one close to Poltava, or on another hand, you have a lot of infrastructure which has been damaged or even destroyed, with like bridges or like other road connections. Russians tried to hit several dams over the Dnieper River recently, and dams provide a significant share of transportation roads across the Dnieper River, connecting the left and the right banks of this huge European river. What is the impact of the war on this part of logistics in Ukraine?
The impact is significant. Unfortunately, I don't remember the exact figures which the World Bank provided in its regular assessment of the losses from Russian aggression. But as you mentioned, one of the issues is the bridges across the Dnieper River. We don't have that many of them, so every collapsed bridge creates lots of problems. With the road transportation, Kyiv was always a big hub, so all the roads in Ukraine lead to Kyiv, and a lot of logistical storage facilities are around Kyiv. So Kyiv always served as sort of logistical hub for Ukraine, and many supermarkets, many trading companies, they rely on this like logistical role of Kyiv as a hub. But there are not many bridges across the Dnieper River, even in Kyiv. So if you disrupt this kind of flow, it's really difficult to find alternative routes. We saw this with an important bridge in Odessa region, which connected parts of Odessa and connected the ports of Odessa. So when the bridge is repeatedly hit by Russians, Russians know perfectly well where the bottlenecks are and what they can target. So the bridge is constantly targeted and constantly repaired. So because there is no other alternative. And then there is a trade-off in Ukraine, because the needs are so great and the damage is so great that Ukraine has to prioritize what to rebuild first. Whether like we have huge damages of buildings of houses. So should you start with rebuilding houses for people, because we need people to return from European countries. We need people to help rebuild the economy. We need people to serve in the army, etc. And for them to return, they need some place to live. So should you start with that? Or should you start with rebuilding the energy infrastructure, which is very important for our enterprises to work and for us to have electricity in our homes? Or you should focus on the logistical infrastructure, roads and bridges, etc. And there is a constant discussion in Ukrainian society on those priorities, and we see some examples of when municipalities try to spend some money on rebuilding roads in the city. People start saying, why are you spending money on roads when there are people dying at the front, and you better buy some drones for our army? So it's a very sensitive issue in Ukraine, this kind of prioritization, and with the limited resources, we need to actually to really prioritize what are our main transportation routes, and also to make those routes somehow secret information for Russians, so that they wouldn't shell them, wouldn't target them.
Absolutely, and of course, logistics is important for both military and civil transportation. You have also named several sectors which are under constant Russian attacks, like the energy sector in Ukraine, and it is a challenge of multiple dimensions, and there is no one only sector to be prioritized in amid this war. But talking about transportation of people in Ukraine and between Ukraine and the EU, you have already named the problem that there is no passenger planes flying from Ukraine. There is also no transport planes flying from Ukraine, but passengers, of course, it is the area where people can rely only on railways or cars or buses. Is there any option to create several hubs close to border? Like there were talks about usage of Uzhhorod airport, which is located directly at the Slovakian border, just a few meters from the border itself. Would it be a solution to create an air hub for Ukrainian passenger transport, or is it just an illusion to have a secure location in Ukraine, even just a few hundred meters from the NATO and EU border?
There are such discussions, and some people suggest actually, as you do, to have Uzhhorod airport as a hub, because it's so close to the Slovakian border. Actually, when the planes land or fly from that border, they have to cross the Slovakian airspace. So close the airport is to the border. But unfortunately, the Uzhhorod airport is very small, and it was underinvested, I would say, before the war. So it needs a lot of investments in remodeling and investments in the runway and all the rest of the equipment. So it wouldn't be able to serve as a hub for the period of remodeling, let's say. Other options that I hear are Lviv airport, which is also it's not as close to the border as Uzhhorod airport, but still it's in the western part of the country, which is not as frequently shelled as the eastern or central part. So it can have it can serve as a sort of hub, but and a third option, I even heard people naming to restore transportation from the Boryspil airport near Kyiv. And the argument for Kyiv is that Kyiv has the best air defense system in Ukraine, so if Kyiv is already covered by the air defense, why not to let the airplanes fly? But this is a big security concern, and so far the authorities in the air transportation, they do not allow to open the airspace of Ukraine, neither in Lviv nor in Kyiv. In Kyiv even more, and right now all I hear is just all these like discussions and speculations, but I don't see any concrete steps taken to make that a reality. So it's being discussed, like different options are provided, but the security concerns are so high that I don't think it will be realized in the near future.
And of course, the best way to solve this problem is to win the war when there will be no danger of Russian missiles flying through Ukraine's airspace, and there will be no problem of exporting the goods through the Black Sea because there will be no fighting on the Black Sea. Of course, there will some sea mines remain, but that is another issue that will be that Ukraine and other nations in the Black Sea will have to deal for several years, maybe after the war. Thank you so much. It was Iryna Kosse, who is a leading research fellow at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting in Kyiv, Ukraine. Thank you so much for your insight, Iryna.
Thank you.
And don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe to this channel. If you have any ideas or comments, leave them under this video and wait for the next interviews.